So George and I are just kind of stepping in. As George said, we're going to go through some of the documents that Alan Oliver has. If you remember, he did a FIDOS inspection document for the NHS, which he's now amended, along with a lot of help from various people in BIM4Housing, to be relevant for residential buildings. So if I share my screen. Okay, can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, right. So we're going, these are color options for the front cover, which we're going with, obviously, BIM4Housing green. Right, let's flick through. It's just the background. These are the key people who've actually contributed to this. The forward is being written by a dignitary in the fire safety world whose name escapes me. George, do you remember?
No.
Yeah. He wrote the forward actually to the NHS document. Right, this is just right. Basically, the guidance is divided into 4. The first covers new installations of fire doors. So it's very in-depth inspections. The second deals with those that are already installed, and again, very in-depth inspections of those. Then section 3 deals with ongoing inspections. So given that they will have already had, whether in section 1 or section 2, an in-depth inspection, section 3 inspections are a bit lighter, a bit more light touch. Then section 4 deals with the fire door management system for maintenance and compliance. There's the index.
Just before we move off that, one of the things that has become very apparent, and I think we're aware of anyway, is obviously with the new regulations, the regularity of inspections is increasing. What I was talking with the fire door with a fire engineer this morning, and he was saying that they've just completed some work on a hospital that's been open for 12 years. And they've identified in this last sort of 3 months that there are 300 fire doors that are not acting as fire doors. So in other words, they're not in compartments. So therefore, for the last 12 years, they've been maintaining these and inspecting them as fire doors where they don't need to. And I think that's quite a regular problem that I understand happens. So to a great extent, if you scroll up for a second, Richard, the point that the team have made is that the initial inspection of section 1 and 2, or the type 1 and 2 surveys, either for inspecting a brand new fire door and making sure that it's fit for purpose to create that baseline, that is only ever done once. And then the type type 3 surveys are the ones that get done regularly. And exactly the same with the existing fire doors. So again, that inspection's only done once to identify what it is and whether it's the right thing for the right context. And then on an ongoing basis, you've got the type 3 surveys. So I'm sorry if that was interjecting.
No, I'm glad you did.
That's something that I've learned over the last year or so, as a layperson, obviously. Yeah, anyway, carry on, Richard, please.
Sorry, I'm just finding.
Sorry, can I just say something to sort of maybe just follow through with what George was saying? The issue at the moment is everybody thinks they're doing a type 3, but because of all the legacy stuff, they're actually doing a type 2. So
Yes.
until we get to the point where everybody's had a more recent type 2, then the type 3 is still irrelevant to an extent. So unless you've actually got a type 2 report sitting there, which if you don't have that, you need to get, then you can't really move on to a type 3. It's the same issue that we have with fire dampers, is that people have been going around saying they've been checking them, and actually they've not been doing a type 2, they've been doing a type 3 because they've assumed that everything's right and it works and that's all they want to do. But actually they haven't looked around the outside and realised that they're not in the wall or something like that. At least it's more obvious with the door, but that's the issue.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, let's just whiz through this. So this goes into some detail. George, if you want to comment on any of this, do so.
Yeah, I mean, as I understand it, fire door inspections are still not there, although there's a number of different accreditation agencies and the like. There's still no qualification for per se. There's no requirement for the person that's doing the inspection to be to be at any level. So this is an attempt, I think a very good one, to provide that sort of background and guidance for people to be able to do that.
All right, this is about compliance of inspections.
So Sheldon, for example, who are one of our members, well, one of the collaborators, they've provided those examples there. So carry on, Richard. Sorry.
No, please do, please do. That continues with now looking at new fire doors, compliance. And then we go into a lot more detail, looking at gaps and seals, hinges, locks and latches, the closer, the door closer, and any other ironmongery, such as letterboxes, vision panels. So there's quite a bit of detail in here. And this is all for type 1 inspections. Type 2, which is about existing fire doors. It's a bit more complex. Looking at the absence of information. Again, the various examples of things that are wrong. It's very thorough, isn't it? Right, type 3, as Paul said, these are only come into play once type 1 or type 2 has been done. These are the less onerous, but just as important, obviously.
I think the important thing here as well is, as I understand it, there's no such thing as if you like, a simple checklist. That's why there's quite a lot of background on this, and also you've got to consider it in line with the the fire strategy and the other considerations. But yeah, carry on, Richard.
Looking at the different functionalities.
Yeah.
And now the planning, it's about creating a fire door management system that is robust. And then just glossary. So quite a nice looking document we've got together there, I think. Anybody got any comments on that?
Yeah, no, not comment. I think that looks very good. I mean, the perhaps the only thing that I mean, I haven't looked through it in any detail, Richard, but I don't know. One of the things that I've been trying to say to people when they're going to look at smoke control systems and fire damper systems, which is a similar thing, is where's last year's report? Where's the schedule?
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that's mentioned in here. So, for instance, you know, where's the type 1 report? Where's the type 2 report? And if you've got a management system, then brilliant. But what's changed, and have things been fixed? Because one of the key things when you're auditing something is, well, you've been given this list last year, and you only did something a week ago.
Yeah.
Do you think that's adequate? So look at whatever records exist, and if there have been any intermediate things that a positive record is just as good as a negative record, because it shows that somebody's looked.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So it's things like that when you're auditing, you can have confidence in the management system.
I think you're absolutely right there. In fun, actually, when we did these round tables, I was chairing that section 4 on the management system. We chopped and changed around a bit, actually, for a number of reasons, for some of the process, and it was quite amazing how much, like, everything. The other sections were relatively straightforward, but they all relied to a large extent on something in section 4. And it was very much a question of, well, should that be included in section 4, or is that something that is down to the inspector? And there was a little bit of ding-donging. I think you were involved with that, actually. A bit of ding-donging on that as which way to go. I'll tell you something else. Another point, actually. This is, as with all BIM4Housing documents, they're dynamic. They're never finished. Firstly, because situations change. Secondly, because legislation changes or gets added to, but also because we're always looking to dig deeper. So there will be quite a significant, I won't say upgrade, but yeah, I will say upgrade on this document in the not too distant future. We've had some very interesting inputs and ideas from looking at the actual risk side of things, which is not hugely involved in this, but is obviously relevant. George actually knows more about that than I do.
I think the other thing is that the whole thing of as to whether something is certificated is really I've learned a lot about. So it might be, essentially, you might think that if you've got a certificate from a door manufacturer or for a door set, then you're sound. But actually, that certification carries with it quite a lot of qualifications. So, for example, we've been working on a project recently where we've actually been doing a deep dive into the fire door information. In fact, all of the Regulation 38 information, and it's quite shocking where the gaps are. So, for example, the fire door information, we initially struggled to even find in the handover information. This is in a new build, where the fire doors were installed. You know, the fire door schedule, or the door schedule. First of all, we struggled to get the door schedule. We got the door schedule. Unfortunately, unfortunately, rather than not unfortunately, the door schedules did correctly reference the drawings, which was good, but there was nothing that actually we then had to struggle to find the what was actually installed, and we were still struggling to find out the detail of who actually did the installation, because the manufacturer's detail, the one that the Warrington Fire information, for example, that was from the blank manufacturer and the door manufacturer who had their doors tested, but they then went to a fabricator, and it was the fabricator that put the doors together, and therefore they were certified under BIM4Housing. So there's a certification there. So but then, because we don't have a record of who installed them or who inspected that installation, then it's arguable whether any of the certification is valid. And it's that sort of, you know, at a very simple level, the golden thread that gets broken. Anyway, I don't know if anybody else has got experience of that.
Well, I mean, that's what we see all the time, George. If you go to a building, and particularly if they've changed FM people, the FM people take everything away with them and throw it away, because they just think, well, we've lost a job, why should we make it easy for somebody else? Now, that might sound a little bit sort of harsh, but it's absolutely true. And people don't know how to put together Regulation 38 packages, because, as you say, with the door, it's actually the whole kit. So it's not just a bit of wood, it's not the door blank, it's anything that's associated with it. And all of those things need to be listed to show you what the kit is. And then that kit needs to be installed. Each of those bits needs to be installed properly. So it makes fire dampers look relatively simple sometimes. But you know, but that is the point. You know, there's hundreds of buildings out there with no fire damper schedules, certainly no installation methods associated with that, and none of them will be installed properly.
Sure.
So you've got all those issues. I think they're now starting to develop schedules of things because people are going around and doing inspections. But the other slight issue, it's fairly obvious that a door's missing because you can't get through a wall. But but if somebody's not putting a fire damper where they should have done,
yeah,
nobody's actually looking for that. So
David,
David, that's a different thing.
Yeah, David, I know Balfour Beatty have been doing a hell of a lot on this in terms of quality checking and all the rest of it. Do you have something to contribute on this?
Not without it being subject to litigation. I unfortunately been rolling my eyes at the conversation that I've been hearing, because it's exactly what we're finding. I work in the post-construction aftercare area of the business, and it's disappointment that the Regulation 38 requirements for this data pack of fire compliance it's as rare as rocking horse poo in some cases, because it's the last thing that people have handed over. And I'm not just talking about Balfour Beatty, you know, it's just rife across the industry as far as what I've seen, you know, and the projects we've inherited from contractors who've gone under, etc. You know, organisations that we've acquired. It's a a disappointing state of affairs to find out that when we come to trying to find historical information, it's piecemeal, and it's painful to find. A lot of cases it does exist. It's just that people don't know where it is, and it's a disproportionate amount of effort just to find archive documentation. But I didn't, without wishing to be too down on the whole construction industry, I think this new focus on golden thread and its simplistic objectives of having complete traceability of system design development, implementation, execution, validation, and handing over to the client in a pack of information is long overdue. And I just think that this type of work that is being done is great. It's needed to be done. It's just disappointing that we find ourselves in this situation that we don't have a lot of information about things. And looking forward, very simplistically, we are trying to instigate, because of the difficulties that we've encountered, that for fire doors, for example, we now are specifying full door sets be purchased and installed. Very nervous of when we get door installer procuring components and elements of fixtures and fittings and door leaves from a range of suppliers to suit their particular, generally financial needs, without realizing that there are implications on the ability to validate, to substantiate what has been provided. And we've got a big push in putting forward certified, tested, factory built fire door sets being installed. That documentary record within our ITP documentation and processes being rapidly expanded. We're doing it for fire alarm systems, emergency lighting, anything to do with active, fire and smoke management systems, and it has been and is being a big culture change in the way that we require our procurement, specification, and site delivery to now operate, and it's what we're doing now because of the lessons learned, and it's in some respects it's disappointing, but I think it's what the industry, because of Grenfell, because of what the Building Safety Act and Dame Judith Hackett said and did and exposed and now legislated for us to do, needs us to carry it forward, and we're doing it. It's a process that is painful and long-winded, but and one that we need to do. So I'll get off my soapbox now and shut up and let somebody else speak.
No, I mean, what was interesting, what you said there for me, is that I think you used the word simple, and I think you're quite right that I think people are looking at the golden thread in a rather simplistic way, and certainly I did when I started on this journey probably 3 or 4 years ago, because I thought that you could have a specification for a product, let's say a door set, and then a manufacturer who would then be providing that, and then an installer that would be installing it. And I've been really, I mean, obviously there's people that are far more experienced than me on this, who understand that the manufacturer is probably 4 manufacturers because you've got a manufacturer of the door blank, you've got manufacturers of the door closers and the ironmongery. And in most cases, what happens is that the designers put together a specification that goes out to an organization who is a fabricator. And it's the fabricator that actually assembles the door set from a series of approved components from the individual manufacturers. And that's something that was, that brings a level of complexity. It is a proper, true supply chain. Jack, what's your experience? I think most of your work is on existing buildings, isn't it? That you've personally been doing.
Yeah, existing buildings. Fully.
Yeah. So you've not been touched so much by, I imagine this. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anybody else that that has been involved in maybe the Regulation 38,
Yeah.
which Elamy? Sorry, who was that? Somebody said something there. No? Okay. Lucy, what do you have a view on this? How are you because you're at Mace, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Yes. What related to there was a number of questions there. So relating to the, is golden thread achievable right now, or related to just generally?
No. It was. I mean, if we keep the focus just for the moment on fire doors,
Yes.
not that fire doors are the be all and end all at all, but it's. I think it's a very topical area, and
Yes.
is one that is causing a lot of people a lot of stress.
Well,
So
yeah, I work very much in examples, but I was talking about this something the other day where we've got problems on one of our projects as an example. If you relate to, competence and people making the right decisions along a chain of events, and we've got an issue where there's a standardized riser door product that we've procured from a very well-known riser door company that has smoke seals on it, but the fire strategy doesn't want smoke seals on the door because detection is outside the door. But the standardized, those procuring the product just procured the general product that was available from this manufacturer, and as a consequence, the fire strategy now doesn't work. So if you look at that as an overall issue, there's if comprehensively as you go through the process and all the interfaces and consequences of a product, we've provided an overspec product that now makes that now has compromises the fire strategy. And it's like where at the point in time was that decision missed or changed? And it's like a golden thread, for example, might record all those actions, but will it pick up the incompetencies on the way, or the fact that most people think if they've overspec'd a product it's a good thing, but actually in this instance is a bad thing. So it's kind of, in my mind, there's really a lot of work to go to break down the design development of a project and making sure that every project has the right people involved in every element of the procurement of every item, or the selection at the beginning, the specification or something. And I certainly think, Paul, we've worked on a lot of projects, and how many specs do you look at on our projects have got the specification writers throwing the kitchen sink at what they want, but actually that doesn't provide them with a safe system at the end of it. And actually there's a whole raft of work done around competency and getting the right things for buildings that I think is really far away from being in a good place. So that makes it, I think, that journey even more harder. Because we just can't buy the design. We can't buy the design correctly at the moment, so we can't buy it. We're not being able to build it or procure it.
I think one of the things that I've encountered with this is that the specification is a far more complex document or set of information than I think most people realise until you actually look at one.
Yeah.
And again, you know, I'm speaking from my naive and non-expert perspective, but the specification for let's say for a door, that can run into 40 or 50 pages.
Yeah, and it's all and invariably, if you look at the detail of it, it's all quite bespoke to that project's needs, isn't it? So actually, then it's very difficult to try and standardise something that satisfies all the nuances of whether it's security, acoustics, fire, whatever that falls within it is very challenging. But what you'll find in the specs, there'll just be generic clauses about BSs of different standards.
That's the thing I find baffling, because actually you don't, it's a performance specification typically, and as you say, you've probably got references to dozens of British standards and ISO standards and things like that. So the person that's actually reading that, you know, I was looking at it in a simplistic way of saying, okay, you're a maintenance organization and you need to go and replace the a door that's been vandalized or something like that, and obviously you want to do the right thing, so you want to go back to the specification. You don't want to just buy an identical product, even if you have the record of that identical product, because that may not have been satisfying the specification anyway. But let's say it is. You go back to the specification, and it's incredibly difficult to actually interpret what that is.
It's just covering the designer for anything that they might have forgotten without actually specifying anything in particular. I think that I was trying to think when the other was having this conversation the other day, was there is an element of there needs to be specialists involved early in the design process, but I don't think right now door manufacturers would be wanting to get involved in projects and take responsibility for all of it, because ultimately you're requiring those specialists to come in early and consider all things they wouldn't normally consider, like fire strategy, all of those things, and make sure they interpret the acoustics, the fire, the security, and take responsibility for their selection. Whereas what normally happens is they just advise, don't they? And then they expect the designer to know that's right. But actually, in reality, the designer is sort of just taking their word for it. So there's kind of the process isn't quite there yet, or the desire to have that responsibility, others to take that responsibility early, maybe isn't there. Sorry, Paul got his hand up, I think, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah, so is Alistair.
I think Alistair was first, so I'll let him go first.
Yeah, could I just say something just before that, just to reinforce what Lucy said there? I've asked in conversation with architects who have shown me the specification that they've generated from MBS Chorus. I've asked them to explain to me what that specification actually means. And they've said, I don't know, right? Because I'm not a specialist in fire doors, or I'm not a specialist in whatever. So therefore, they're using the specification. And I'm not saying this to be critical of the architect. It's the fact that they don't know enough about all of the detailed standards of fire doors, for example. What they're doing is they're then relying, as Lucy's just said there, on the specialist to interpret that specification in the context of the fire plan and in the context of the other considerations, and then come up with a solution.
Which they have no liability for in the contract. Right.
Correct.
So all they'll be liable for is the order that they've placed. They won't be liable for the other elements that have made the decisions for why it's there. So there's a gap.
And I think that was what I was sort of sorry, Alistair, just in support of what Lucy's sort of saying is that there's very little point in having a specification because there's actually no design document. So because there's no actual design document, nobody really knows. And Lucy's absolutely right, because one of the things I always ask is, who's actually responsible for the design of this project? And everybody looks over their shoulder, which is the first thing. But you can't, and everybody contractually is putting this selection and design problem further and further down the chain. And what people need to realise is that, yeah, if the architect has drawn something that they want, then surely the next person, which would probably be the consultant, then designs that and argues with the architect and says, I'm sorry, you can't have a brown one in this instance because there's not one that's been fire tested. You've got to have a green one. And I know that's a very simplistic example, but you can't just write down a whole load of numbers and then just pass it down the chain, because it's too late. There is no design. It's all being designed on the hoof. And at the moment, I'm not seeing anything changing. And I don't know whether on the HRBs the Gateway 2 is going to change this, because
I think it has to.
I believe it has to, but I don't know that the regulator has got enough skills to know that the design's still not right.
Yeah, I think
and even with the fire strategy, some of it just says you need it. I mean, it doesn't even mention fire doors, to be fair, in a fire strategy. It will just say you need fire doors. And the whole thing, nobody's thinking about it at the right stage. They're all very, it's like everybody's very keen to start making stuff, but nobody's actually got a plan and a design to start from.
Alistair.
Aye, a few points in the that I've now got from the intervening conversations. The initial point I was going to make with regards to you mentioned about fire doors being an assembly of components. It doesn't have to be, because the architect or whoever could actually specify a door set, a pre-hung door set.
Yes.
I remember back, I mean, this is going back quite a while ago, discussing with my German colleagues, and one part of the conversation came up about fire doors. And when I described at that time fire doors being a procurement of a blank, a couple of lengths of 4x2s, buying a packet of hinges, and the look in these guys' eyes was they were incredulous. It was like, sorry, you do what? I said, yeah, that's how we do it in GB. And over there, they had an established market of pre-hung fire doors, which were basically bought in a shrink pack and just placed in the opening in the wall. And you then had a factory assembled frame door, and it was just slotted in by a manufacturer recommended installer, and the whole thing was then certified. It came with the certification document, which could then be passed on to the client. And yeah, and everything was done in the factory. The gaps were all checked, pre-checked, and it was all certified, signed off, and it was just then down to the site to put it in. And you know, it's the same in this country. You can buy pre-hung fire door sets. So your point about buying a blank, buying bits of timber, hinges, and assembling the door, that, you know, there are ways around that. If the specification states that they use a pre-hung door set, then surely that's going to get around some of the problems.
Well, sorry, Alistair, that's actually the challenge that I've come across. The fabricator is a manufacturer, right? They are completing the complete door set in a factory.
Yes.
Yeah. So they are a manufacturer. It's just that they're not the original. They don't manufacture everything, and no manufacturer manufactures everything, do they?
No. But at the same point, if they have a test and an approval, and even if they go to the point of, say, getting their door, well, now UKCA marked, then under the AVCP system that they have I mean, I'm referring, like, for example, our own products. When we manufacture, for example, sealants, we have to have those materials, raw materials, supplied by certain factories. We can't go shopping, you know, from month to month. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, there was a fire in a BASF factory, from which we get one of our raw material components for our white mastic, as it's called in the industry. And we couldn't shop around because the restrictions of our CE marking and our ETA. We cannot just change. And so the manufacturers of these door sets, if they have an approval, like a UK CE mark on the door, they are restricted by their AVCP inspection system. They can't go shopping around and say, right, well, we can't, you know, we can get cheaper hinges elsewhere, because the approval and their test, which comes from the test, is only for that particular set of hinges which they buy in. So yeah, from a specifier's point of view, if the specifier says, I'm only going to use a UKCA pre-hung door set, then he knows that whilst the manufacturer of the door set supplies that, there is traceability on the hinges, on the ironmongery, and all the way back.
I absolutely. I've learned a huge amount more about doors than I ever really wanted to know,
Yeah.
to be honest. But it's because every time I think I've got a handle on it, another little window, another door opens.
Well, don't start talking about windows and fire doors.
Yeah, quite. So, but the point, what I've, and you know, please, anybody else that has an alternative knowledge of this, please tell me. But what there are people like, you know, for example, Housespan or Distinction Doors, who are part of our community. They are they either manufacture door blanks and also the frames, and they're the ones who pay Warrington Fire to have the test certificates done. So they will, and I've seen, for example, a 240-page document that goes through all of the tests that Warrington Fire carry out. These documents, by the way, are typically confidential because they don't want their competitors to see how the tests have been done for their particular products. But they do supply them as a complete door set, but the majority of their business is through fabricators. And it's the fabricators who also work from factories who will then take the specification. So they're approved fabricators for Housespan, and Housespan will then provide them with the detailed specification of what the tests were, what the approved products were, you know, whether they were whoever the manufacturer, you know, Rutland or whatever of the door closers. And then it will be up to the fabricator to look at the specification of that particular contract, and they will then provide a completed door set that satisfies that specification. Now, in that particular case, they then have got approved installers. Yeah. So I don't know whether it's just, it probably isn't the same with M&E. I imagine that, you know, obviously relatively simple devices like dampers and you probably manufacture the whole thing, wouldn't you, Stephen? And
yeah, typically if you're making, other than you might, you know, typically actuators would probably be bought in, but the mechanical side of it is generally done by one manufacturer. Yeah.
But an AOV, for example, that's a good example where an AOV, SE Controls, for example, they are a manufacturer, but they are assembling products from different manufacturers. So,
but But that's the same thing, actually, George. They've got their mechanical product that they put together, and then they put an actuator on it, and they're just two pieces, and there should be evidence that those two pieces have been tested together.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the point. It's the same thing as you've just described with the doors, that these you get this large amount of information, but you can only put together this closer and this handle and
this
that,
vision
and the
panel.
other.
Yeah.
And that's the bit that gets missed, because somebody just orders all the blanks and then orders all the handles separately and then puts them together on site, because they don't realise the responsibility that they're taking.
Yeah, I think that hopefully is now becoming less, because people like Bex, for example, you require a specific a certificate on every door, don't you?
I think she's left us.
Ah, okay.
There's a message in the chat.
Okay, fine. Lucy, sorry, you've got.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that the reason, what I was getting at is, it's not necessarily the competence of the supply chain necessary to make something that they want to sell, or it's about the product on site. If say, I don't know, I'm going to pick on you, Steve Gore. You've got you provide a product on site and you supply it to one of our MEP supply chain. They'll have a contract of purchase with you. We'll have a contract with them, but then the selection of that product can be invariably be quite onerous. I mean, in the sense of, it's not necessarily always the designers. It kind of falls between two lines of responsibility of the trade or the designer, and really it should be the designer. But if that isn't fit for purpose in the location it has been selected, it has been installed, it's actually, we're not going to go after you, Steve, are we? We're going to go after that installer, and they're going to go, well, actually it should have been, I don't know, I'm going to pick on WSP, it should have been WSP or something. And this is where it all falls down. And then you go back to Paul White's looked at WSP specs, and WSP have the kitchen sink in the specification, which doesn't necessarily tell anyone what it wants. And it's kind of, I just feel like, yeah, it's that to make the Building Safety Act work, the roles and responsibilities need to be clear, and between every party involved and what they are liable for, and liability is an important thing here, because it means that they are culpable for it, not they've just got their finger in the pie and it's a bit muddied, and that needs to be consistent for all projects and not varied, like, so, because you can't have a trade contractor who's doing the installation on the back end of a project selecting the damper products that may not fit with the system that it's preferred for, because that selection, as an example, like doors, has other influences beyond just, I don't know, an isolated, does it go on and off? There are, you know what I mean, there are more to it. And I guess that's where I'm identifying as that we are not clear on the roles and responsibilities, and I think certainly the building contracts like JCT, things that aren't helping things really, because it's not, it's just flipping risk without much thought, and I don't think the Building Safety Act really addresses that either.
Agreed. Alistair.
Ranting.
No, not at all.
To pick up on Lucy's point, what I was going to say is that my understanding, certainly the Building Safety Act, is that if you want to get gateway through gateway 2 to allow you to put a spade in the ground, then you're going to have to convince the building safety regulator that you have met all requirements, that you've got a compliant design. Now, if he looks at a design and it's just like he sees a detail in the BIM model with just FD, at the walls, he could be within his rights to turn around and say, yeah, but what type? What have you got in there? Right? Well, have you specified something that's CE marked, or have you got something specified there that somebody's going to rock up to a little backstreet metal basher and procure something? He may turn around and say, I reject this application at Gateway 2, do not pass go, do not collect £200, reapply again. And this is after taking 3 months struggling through the BIM design, trying to figure out, is this a compliant design? So to me, my understanding is the upfront specification and upfront detail is really kind of behoves the architect and the client to ensure that they've got that specification right and enough detail for the building safety regulator to make his decision.
I think the one of the key things there is that the specification itself, I think we have to use slightly different terminology, which certainly Lucy's colleague Paul McSolly and Paul and Stephen Gore have been working on, and that is the difference between a descriptive specification and a prescriptive specification. So the prescriptive specification, my understanding is that actually is what it is. It's not how it's going to perform. It's actually it's actually more. It's clearer. Am I right on that, Paul?
I mean, I think, I mean, yes. If a product has a classification, in theory, as long as you buy the product with the correct classification to go in the correct substrate, you in theory can't be wrong. Now, the point is that a lot of different products will require different size holes and things like that, and slightly different installation methods. But you're right, the classification would work. I think the short-term issue with getting through Gateway 2 is that if somebody waves one of these existing specifications at somebody and says, "Oh, I've put all these standards in," then the regulator's not necessarily going to be clever enough to realise that isn't enough.
Can I just show people that may not be aware, because I got an architect to do this for me. So this is a specification. This is straight from this is simply putting a door in a wall. Yeah, and this is coming out of MBS Chorus, and you'll see here this is it's 31 pages. So this is going through the detail of the wall. Now, this is the operations group. So would an FM manager be able to, that has to replace a door, how are they going to interpret all of this? I don't think it's possible.
I mean, I think that's the point, George. This is a kitchen sink specification of the nth degree, and the point is that it's meaningless because there's way too much information.
Exactly.
And this is the problem. In terms of an FM manufacturer going to replace a door, unfortunately, they're going to go and have to find an expert, because they're going to have to consider everything and specify the correct door, because at that point they have a design responsibility. And again, I think what we're seeing is that most people don't realize the level of responsibility they're taking by just changing things.
Yes,
and I don't think they realize the responsibility they're taking by not fixing things, but because they have no experience of it. And
but for example, you've got somebody that's you've got a housing association that's got a particular problem where a tenant now the entrance door to their flat's been smashed in. Yeah.
Yes.
So the asset team have got to obviously make it good as quickly as possible. Now they can obviously put something temporary in there to provide some sort of security, but it's not the case that they'd be able to go back to so easily go back to the original supplier. I don't know. It seems to me to be a complex thing.
And this is your chicken and egg situation where you're absolutely right. At the moment, it's impossible. So therefore, you've got to find somebody who's a designer who's got to go and look at that and do it properly. Hopefully, going ahead with the golden thread, they'll just be able to go doop, doop, doop. Oh, it's one of these doors, and then they go and buy one and they put it in. And this is the whole issue that we've got at the moment. Is just that everything's been let go so far that it's impossible to do it without using some sort of expert who is capable, and then I'm incapable and competent of actually making a correct design decision.
Okay, there's a couple of other things. Thank you, Paul. There's a couple of other things I want to cover before we've only got half an hour left. Alistair, is there something quick that you can?
Just quick. That specification you put up, whilst the stuff that we're involved with, it doesn't venture into that kind of level of detail. Just as an example, the other day I had a specialist contractor came to me and gave me a specification. I need a 60-minute fire stop product that's going to give me 45 dB, that's going to be able to use in this, and it's one side of the installation, etc., etc. And I just replied with, you need this product. This is what you need. And that fulfills all that specifications. So whilst that specification is, and it's a different kind of field describing timbers and etc., etc., a prescriptive specification can potentially cut through all that by saying, I need one of these, and that's it. Because it goes back to, I think, the point you made earlier, Paul, and that a specifier, a designer will have a list of prerequisites or parameters in terms of what a particular application needs to meet in terms of performance from various other approved document requirements. And for some manufacturers, they will have enough detail to act as, be the expert to say, actually, we've got something that ticks all those boxes. If you specify this thing, particularly by name, this will meet all of your requirements.
Brilliant. I absolutely agree. And I think it's that intermediary step that we've got to figure a way of doing, arriving at that prescriptive specification. And I think that really is what the Building Safety Act and the gateways and Gateway 2 is actually requiring. People have been, understandably, designers have been concerned about doing that because if they are prescriptive, then that could be causing them problems with the procurement rules, the EU in particular procurement rules. But I think we're overriding that now, where products do have to be selected, and quite frankly, if they're not selected by Gateway 2, the organisation has got a real problem. And then if something, the change control process requires them to, particularly on safety critical products, would need, is it 8 weeks? 8 weeks, I think, for an approval, 6 weeks or 8 weeks. But you've got to inform the regulator of changing out, for example, Swigon's dampers. Not that anybody would do that, though, Steve. No.
As long as they're in the right place, it's fine. Otherwise, I'll be the first one to tell them to change them.
I think one of the issues that lies with that is you're right that some of these things are major changes and some of these things are notifiable changes. The notifiable changes means you tell somebody and then nobody picks it up until the end and then realise actually it was a major change, and I'm not sure that that's going to solve the problem. It still comes down to, if the design's right to start with, then you can build the building quickly, and if it isn't, then you're going to get held up all along the line.
Okay. So we've got a couple of things happening next week and the week after that I wanted to make you aware of. First is that those of you, I think a number of you have been involved in this. So we had these are questions that came up in the summer. Exactly, I think, from what we've just been talking about there. How do we prevent the incorrect design, selection and installation of fire safety products? And we had the workshops. We've produced a document from the suggestions that people have made. This is the next question. How do we make sure that the asset information continues through the process? Also, how do we make sure that the safety case information is not just a snapshot in time, that it's a building safety management system? And also, how do we ensure that in particular contractor design portion, meaning that M&E design gets done after all the partitioning is installed, so we've been doing this now. A lot of people on this call know this. We produce this document, which then is the summary of that work. So these are the sort of contributions that people have made, which I think has been quite well received. And then so we've got next week, we've got 2 sessions of new people looking at these as well. So I think, Richard, we've got about sort of between 20 and 30 people on each of those sessions, I think, haven't we?
Something like that. Over 30, 20, 30 to 30 on the first 3. Around about 15, 16 on the fourth one so far, but there's still people signing up. And new people also.
So the purpose of this is to just flush this out, because these are the questions actually that we've been talking about this morning. So if you're not already engaged in that, then let us know, and you can join. Should we?
Just put it if you want to come along. Right, there are 2 of them on the 6th of December, and 2 of them are on the 14th of December. So they're the days. So if you want to if you put in the chat that you're interested and which question, do you want to put the questions in the chat? And the dates, so people can
exactly.
Put that in the chat, and then if anyone is interested in any of those questions and wants to come along to the meeting, just put it in the chat and we'll get you out an invite.
Also, if you have any suggestions as to how best we can disseminate that information, I mean, we're going to send it back to the HSE and Deluxe, so that they can see the observations and thoughts that are coming out of the community. But if you've got any suggestions as to how we get that out, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, and just since George mentioned that, watch this space next week, Wednesday. You may see something quite interesting.
God, you got me
intrigued now. On the Deluxe. No, you don't know yet. I haven't told you. I tried to say yesterday.
Okay, good. And then if I also show you, this is the work that so this is the work in progress that has been done, that I think Paul, Steve, have you been involved in this one?
No.
So this is being produced again by, it's coming out of healthcare or the NHS, but it's the same sort of format, but this time it's for fire dampers, fire stopping, cavity barriers. So we want to do the same. We're being given the opportunity of doing the same for our residential products. I don't know what you think, but would you agree this is really good stuff? I know you've not seen it yet, but any observations?
I
No,
can
it
give you
looks-
some
yeah.
better pictures of dampers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're more than welcome.
I'll email some over.
Yeah. Well, what I'll do actually is I'm going to send you this. I'm going to make
Yep.
this available to you so that you can, because what we actually want is something in context. Because you sending me some photographs of dampers isn't going to help me at all. But if you've got something that is contextual, Stephen, that would be fantastic.
Yes, send it over and I'll have a look.
Yeah, and same with anybody else. If you've got some suggestions in terms of this, you know, again, this is work in progress, but it's being shared with us because the people that are authoring it, you know, have been impressed with the work that we've done on the fire doors. Yeah, okay, that's that.
Yeah, could you also send that to me, George? Just have a look at
Of
that
course.
one on the far
No,
stop.
most definitely. Yeah,
Yeah, I'd only seen a draft. I don't think I'd seen that one yet. So
yeah.
I went fairly comprehensively through the draft, but I don't know, as you say, whether the pictures are relevant necessarily.
No, sure. Any other observations?
If anybody wants a copy of that to have a flick through, just put it in the chat. I think Alistair's put it in.
Yeah. Good. Do we want to pick up on what we did last week, Richard? Do you want to just explain what happened on the
Yes,
event with?
We had a big event last week, which some of you came to, with a panel, a distinguished panel, including obviously our own George, a guy with Chris from who advises members of the DLUC committee. The idea being that
and Dave Williams.
Dave Williams, yes, Dave Williams, and sorry, what was the other guy's name?
Yeah,
Adam,
Howard Hall. Howard Hall.
Howard Hall, sorry. We started off with the process a couple of months ago with 4 questions, which became 5, which through meetings, including meetings, operations group meeting, I think last time, they were refined and added to. We've now got 7 questions, which we went through at the meeting. We're going to be producing a document on with a lot of input, an insane amount of input. So it's going to take quite a while actually to produce. You'll have to excuse me, I've got flu, so I'm a bit all over the place. We've had a lot of input and we're still obviously looking for input. So during the meeting, we got through, I think, 3, maybe 4 of the questions. So I didn't know if it's worth having a quick run through what we didn't get through at the meeting today. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Jess, have you got those questions?
Yeah, it's in the chat.
Oh, the great. No. There's 7 questions from the meeting. Hold on a minute.
Yep.
Let me see if I can.
Yep.
Have you got them?
I'm opening it.
Brilliant. Shay, if you share your screen, thank
Yep.
you. Great. There we go. Let's go down to question. I think we got through question 4, didn't we, George?
Yes.
Okay, let's look at question 5. Right, this was for the HSE and BSR. The definition of a higher risk building is different from the construction phase to the operational phase. This creates complexity with the golden thread information gathered during the construction phase as it is not always relevant to the operational phase, leading to more complex document and data structures. It's too early to tell how challenging this might be. However, this is the question. However, has this issue been considered as part of the definition process? So has anybody got any views on that question? Whether it's clear enough, whether the background covers everything, or should there be other things included in that? It's obviously very relevant to this group.
Dave had a contribution to that last week. Mustafa, you're with Clarion, aren't you?
Hello. Yes. There? Yeah.
Clarion, I just wondered. Obviously, are you still working with Jack on the existing estate?
Existing stock? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, would you? I'm sorry to pick on you, but
right.
that's what we do. Would you have a view on the way existing buildings are being considered from as HRBs? Because it's not just the height of the building, is it? It's also how the building's being used. That's my understanding.
I don't know. To be fair, I mean, it is the height of the building. I don't even understand this question. How is it going to be different from construction to operational phase? The height of the building does not change during the construction phase. There's planning and design before that.
Yeah, higher risk building isn't simply the height of the building, though, is it? An HRB, there's a number of different definitions for. That's my understanding, anyway.
I think it has to have residential, but I mean the point is that statement doesn't seem right to me either, and I think that's Mustafa's point. Can we see the two definitions? Because I can't understand why they would be different.
Aren't there some buildings that are considered HRBs in construction but not operations? I think hospitals are one of them, if they meet the height and residential and some of the other requirements.
That could be it.
Well, I mean, I know hospitals count as HRBs, but again, I don't know why they would be different in construction to operation.
I don't, but I think it was something that came up when I did some training with Hal the other day, that they sat under one but not the other.
I mean, we didn't write the question. It actually came out of the one of the working groups. Okay,
I think it'd be worth actually stating what the two definitions were next to that question, so that we might understand the question a bit better.
Yeah, because certainly, if you're not understanding it, the HSE and the BSR aren't going to understand it probably.
Okay, I think we need to track down where that question originally came from, Richard. Yeah, so let's look. We've got 10 minutes left. Should we look at
quickly at the next one, shall we? Oh no, the next one's. Sorry, I'm not sure the next one is actually relevant. The secondary legislation brought in different categories of work: Category A, Category B, and schema and exempt works. Category A works are subject to the building control approval, as are some Category B. Anything that's not Category A is Category B, unless it's schema or exempt works. This is not very clear. You're not kidding. Likewise, when remedial works are carried out on an existing building, does this flip the building from existing building status? And our question to them is there further guidance on this to clarify?
Yeah, it's almost tied into the previous question, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, no, not yeah. Is it? This is more about the second part of the question is about obviously if it flips from being an existing building, then that is more onerous, isn't it? Very much so. And there's a lot. This was a bit in a couple of the meetings. This was a very, very big point because nobody had a clue.
Stephen.
So I've just found some notes going back to question 5. Hospitals that meet the requirements of HRBs are HRBs through construction, but not operations, because they then fall under workplace regulation and the health and social care regulation.
So it's hospitals, is it?
Hospitals and care homes, I think, if they meet the requirements of an HRB, they're HRB in construction, but not in operation, because they then fall under a different regulation.
Okay, but they're
so
all
from our point of view, it still means that during construction they've got to meet all the rules that an HRB would, which is
yeah. So care homes, for example, are very relevant for. I mean, a lot of our members are doing care homes as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
Would that be extra care? I suppose it would be, wouldn't it? It's.
Yeah, we're about to introduce quite a lot more information in 9991 on that. We've been working through. In fact, our next, which is our whatever it is, 52nd meeting.
Okay. Quite. It just shows how much work goes into these things, doesn't it? Often not recognised. Yeah. Okay, so I think let's throw things out to the floor, Richard, unless you've any other.
No, anybody else got it? Yeah, let's hear from the meeting.
Are there any questions, any points that anybody wants to raise? Otherwise, we can finish early. Okay, well, I think that's a vote. I hope you found it useful. Sorry, carry on.
Sorry, George. Right at the very beginning, you mentioned something about risk.
I mentioned about risk in terms of including it in the fire doors guidance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just a philosophical point that I think we need some means of risk assessing these, but I think it's very building specific and it's very space specific. And I'm very worried about putting out anything that's generic, because guess what?
Yeah.
It'll just be used without any consideration.
Absolutely.
And that worries me. So I never.
Well, let me tell you,
I'm never doing anything like that at the moment.
This is why we didn't initially include it. Yeah. We tried to keep it very much down to the inspection and the inspection regimen, rather than going too deep in or kind of off the tangent. But we have been discussing this with a number of quite significant people in that field, and I think George knows more about this than I do, but I think there's we've arrived at a place where we can do it generically but flexibly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, I'm still concerned that basically you'll get your fire damper test inspection report, and right at the bottom it'll say whatever you said in this document, which says something along the lines of, because of this, that, and the other, this is all right. And the point is that will just become a standard clause that everybody will put in their report, so they don't have to do anything. So just be really careful. Unless this is underwritten by chartered engineer or something like that, I think you need to be very careful, because people will just use it because it's in somebody's written it down once and that's it. It'll just be boom, 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 and nobody will do anything. And that's, I think, potentially people aren't assessing the risk. They're just falling behind something that somebody said. So
yeah,
just a philosophical point, really.
No, I actually agree with you.
So yeah, okay. Sorry to interrupt you, George.
No, not at all. I'm glad you did. Actually, I'm glad you did. Okay, if nobody's got anything else,
Stephen, I wanted just a very quick word with you about the work that we're doing with Lloyd's Register. So I wondered if you could Can I speak to you directly after this, or could you hold on for
I can
5
hold on.
minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank
And
you.
everybody, remember, if you're interested in any of those questions on the 6th and the 14th, put your name in the chat.
Cool.
Other than that, we'll see you next year.
Thank you. See you later.
Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.